Today, we are taking a ride on a classic Dutch train from the 1970s, one that nobody expected to run again in regularly scheduled service. It was fully retired years ago, withdrawn from daily operation, and preserved as a museum train. So, why is it back? And how is it running regular passenger trips in 2025? Stay with us, because this story has some surprising details. We are about to step inside a piece of Dutch railway history and take it for a ride. Let's take a look. It's early morning here in the Netherlands, and we just woke up on the European sleeper train after a relatively short westward overnight trip from Berlin. It's early September, and the heat of summer is just starting to break. At 5:50, we glide into the station, climb off of the train, and watch our sleeper train depart, continuing on towards Amsterdam and eventually Brussels. Side note, we are working on a dedicated video about our experience on this train, so if you want to know more about this fascinating overnight service operated by a startup company, please be sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. We are here in Amersfoort Central Station, a major stop about 30 minutes from Amsterdam and an important junction that links the western part of the country to the railway lines in the northeast. So, why hop off of the overnight sleeper train at this station? Most of the trains passing through Amersfoort are operated by NS, the national railway operator. However, the service we're taking today is run by a different operator, Keolis. We'll be riding the Valleilijn, which translates, somewhat obviously, to the Valley Line. For many years, locals have endearingly referred to it also as the Kippen line, or Chicken Line. Service on this line is designated as line RS34. Most services run through to Ede-Wageningen, but a few trains short-term in Barneveld Zuid to provide additional service frequency closer to Amersfoort. It is one of these amplifier services that we'll be riding today. Keolis has a concession to operate this service, and it uses a small fleet of electric multiple units. This is a mix of two different types of rolling stock. Firstly, there are some fairly standard Stadler FLIRTs, one of which we had a chance to briefly ride on. More interestingly though, the line also uses the exceptionally rare Protos trains, a one-off batch of cars from a small, now defunct German manufacturer, Fahrzeugtechnik Bahnen Dessau, otherwise known as FTD. Back at Amersfoort Centraal, instead of one of those modern EMUs, a vintage electric train from the 1970s appears in the distance, a scene more reminiscent of a rail enthusiast special rather than a morning rush hour commuter service. This is the Mat'64, also known as the Plan V, and nicknamed the Apekop, meaning monkey head, referring to the distinctive rounded cab profile. For decades, this train was one of the most common electric trains in the Netherlands, one of a series of similar train sets built beginning in 1961 up until 1976. This specific set was built in 1972 and served faithfully well into the 2010s. It's hard to understate just how fascinating this is. We are boarding a literal museum train, being used in daily morning rush hour service. Stepping inside is like going back in time. Classic vinyl seating and large openable windows give it a strong mid-20th century identity. The train departs Amersfoort and accelerates through the suburbs into open countryside, and we get a beautiful view out of the window as dawn breaks over the Dutch landscape. As a museum train, this train set is well cared for. Two variations of the Mat'64 were built. There's the 4-car Plan T and the later 2-car Plan V. This specific one that we're riding, train set 904, is a Plan V, and was preserved as a museum train after the retirement of the Mat'64 fleet in 2016. Exploring the interior, it's easy to see how much railcar design has changed over the last half-century. Unlike the modern, wide-open saloons that are common today, this train is divided up into old-style saloon cabins. In the first-class section, the train even has classic compartment-style seating, in addition to standard saloon seating. We took this train to Barneveld Zuid station, an interesting single-track stop located on a photogenic curve where the Valai line curves south away from the main tracks that continue east. This is certainly one of the best photographic angles for capturing the Mat'64. Soon after, we hopped on a regular train back to Valleilijn, where we jumped back on board the Mat'64, this time full of morning rush hour commuters, to head back to Amersfoort. So, why is a museum train running in daily weekday passenger service now? The answer is quite simple, actually. When Keolis took over the operation of this line in 2023, it was required to make some modifications to its trains, including a new livery, refurbished interiors, and the addition of toilets to the Protos sets. This posed a bit of a logistics challenge for Keolis. With such a small fleet of trains on hand, Keolis didn't have enough rolling stock to operate the peak timetable while concurrently refurbishing its cars, even just one train set at a time. Rather than cancel or cut services, Keolis looked around at what rolling stock was available, and they ended up working with the 2454 crew, a non-profit Dutch railway preservation group. Working with them, Keolis leased their Mat'64 for 2 years, with the train entering service in May 2025. The restored train was inspected and prepared for service, repainted in the local operating colors, and now operates 2 round trips between Amersfoort Centraal and Barneveld Zuid during the morning weekday rush hour. The preservation and strategic reuse of vintage rolling stock is an increasingly common occurrence in the railway industry, and the strategic preservation of historic trains is actually becoming considered an international best practice. Beyond cultural preservation, these trains also provide operational resilience, as seen here. Besides Keolis, one of the best examples is actually in our hometown of New York City, where preserved museum trains like the R32s, R9s, and Redbirds are some of the most profitable pieces of rolling stock per operated mile in the New York City subway system. Besides being used on extremely well-attended ticketed enthusiast runs, New York's vintage trains are also frequently used in public relations events, film shoots, and even emergency response training. This ensures that regular passenger trains do not have to be pulled from service for these tasks, while allowing the MTA to offer a better product to production studios that are hoping to maximize the historical authenticity of their work. At least in the United States, other transit agencies are following New York's lead, with Chicago establishing a robust museum train program directly modeled after New York's, while Washington, D.C.'s CEO, Randy Clark, has begun hinting at the restoration of Washington Metro's preserved 1000 series cars. What Keolis has done here in the Netherlands is almost certainly a form of parallel evolution, but it's interesting to note how several transport authorities are realizing the value of supporting rolling stock preservation and strategically using these vintage trains, not just as a cultural activity, but from an operational resiliency standpoint as well. The Mat'64 has attracted a ton of attention from rail enthusiasts, and we hope that this video inspires you guys to check it out as well. If you want to ride the train yourself, just keep in mind that it only runs those 2 round trips in the morning rush hour. We recommend using the ⁴ ⁷ treinen website, which shows every scheduled service, its destination, and the rolling stock that it's scheduled to use. Looking at the departures from Amersfoort, it's extremely easy to find which services are scheduled to use the Mat'64. And if you want to check this out yourself, we have included the link in the description below. We were very fortunate with the timing here. We only had a few hours in the Netherlands between arriving on the overnight train from Germany and catching a flight from Schiphol to Billund to continue north to Lemvig, where we explored the last operating Y trains in Denmark. That, of course, is also something that we'll be showing you guys in a future video. Be sure to subscribe to the channel to make sure that you don't miss it. We truly hope that you enjoyed this video, a genuine snapshot of what everyday rail travel looked like in the late 20th century Netherlands. Lots more videos of fascinating railway operations are coming soon, and we hope that you'll stay tuned to see what's coming next. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.